Hey, pickleballers, and welcome to another episode of the PickleBros podcast. As always, thank you for your likes, comments, and subscribes. And shout out to Carbon Pickleball. Use code PickleBros for 10% off of your next order. Today's discussion is going to be awesome. A little unusual for us, but totally awesome. It is the PickleBros origin story. How our athletic background contributes and affects the way we play pickleball. Now, this will be in large part a get to know the bros episode. So if you're not interested in that, you have our permission to tune out. But there's going to be some really fascinating and interesting applications across sport applications from our experience and how what we've done in the past athletically feeds into our current approach to the game of pickleball. So it's going to be really exciting. Really interesting, and I can't wait to get into it. But first, we have to do our obligatory DUPR check. And as Jesse pulls mine up, I don't know if there's that much action from us this week. There's a lot of action in terms of tournaments, but in terms of DUPR, I'm still sitting at 4.49.
Yeah, but last week you were at 4.54. You went down because you and your brother lost to Monty and Jared.
Oh, well, I'm remembering incorrectly. Big surprise there. Yeah, we had a tough DUPR match and lost there. Stolp, what are you sitting at?
Same, 4.62. Happy with that. Sit on it. No change. Type it in there.
Okay, 4.62. Mine went from 4.51 to 4.49. A drop as a result of my loss in a DUPR league match with Tim to two very strong players. So Tim also went down from 4.73 back to 4.71 where he was 2 weeks ago.
Still above that 4.7 though, Tim.
Yeah, but there are no moral victories in today's DUPR.
I love that. So while DUPR is a little less interesting for us this week, in terms of tournament action, it was really awesome. Jesse, why don't you go ahead and kick off your experience at regionals?
Okay, so this is the USA Pickleball Great Plains Regionals held in Colorado Springs, where we live. And I signed up originally in the spring for both men's doubles and mixed doubles. But as I've mentioned in some previous episodes, the registration for this tournament was pretty slow. And my men's doubles partner, wrote me in April, and he said, "Hey, we're the only ones in our bracket. Aren't you concerned?" And I said, "No, it's only April. Just give it some time. I'm sure it'll be fine." And then he texted me again in May, and he said, "Hey, we're still the only ones in our bracket. I'm starting to get worried here." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. People will sign up." And then came June. We were still the only ones in our bracket. And he wrote me again. And this time he said, "You know what? I'm withdrawing from the tournament." So I initially tried to scramble to find a replacement, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, why do I want to play men's doubles when there's nobody in our bracket? I mean, they're going to move us, either they'll move us up to 5-0. I wanted to play 4-5. They'll move us down to 4-0, or they'll lump us together with the kiddos like you, Ian, which I didn't really relish.
Yeah, so
I was like, you know what? I'm just going to skip men's this time. So I just focused on mixed with my wife, and we played 4-0. 50 to 54. There were 6 teams. We placed 5th. We went 2 and 3, but we were not greatly outmatched. We actually nearly beat the team that went on to win the bronze medal match. That game was to 15, and we lost 16-18. I think we had 4 match points, but we couldn't put it away. And then we beat the team that went on to win the gold medal, 15-10. So I feel like we were in the mix. The results didn't go the way we had hoped.
That happens so often, doesn't it? Where you end up beating the team that wins.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the 5 top teams were all kind of somewhat similar in ability, and it didn't go our way this time. But we're going to continue to challenge ourselves and play up at 4-0, even though we could play 3-5 if we wanted to. But we like the challenge. We think it's good for our development in the sport.
Yeah, I love that. And I was able to come down with my daughter and watch you guys and support you a little bit, which was super fun. I only played in men's in 4.5 with the often mentioned Louis sitting at a 5.07 DUPR. Awesome player, some mad skills, the stuff he can do with the paddle. He does that ping pong grip. It's really, really good stuff. We ended up taking silver. We went There were 6 of us. We went 4-1 in the round robin. Lost to some of our local buddies, Mike McGregor and Craig Duncan, 4-5, 5-0 bubble players. We gave them a good match, lost 15-12, I believe. And then, I mean, not to be disrespectful, we kind of sleptwalk our way through the rest of that bracket. We were winning. The next closest game we had, we won 15-8, and the biggest margin we won was 15-2. So we felt real proud of that result. Ended up in the gold medal match against McGregor and Duncan again. And we took them to 3 games. We lost 4-11, we won 11-9, and then lost 4-11. Both of them had some great improvement. It was a great match, and we got beat by better players that day. I would have liked to have played a little bit better. But, the results, I think, actually ended up exactly how they should have been. An interesting side note from the tournament, though, my paddle delaminated. And I used the Carbon 2X. I want to say it delaminated at the tournament. I don't think it actually delaminated at the tournament. I think it was a slow buildup. For the last couple of weeks, I had some concerns about it. But, Jesse, you noticed it, and several other people noticed it during the tournament itself.
I actually did not notice it because my ability to hear tones, I think, is poor. But the first person who said something to me was our friend Sean Hatch. And he said, something's going on with that paddle. And then I could hear it. And I wonder if the reason Sean noticed it first is that he is a music aficionado. He's always going to concerts. So I think he has a very keen ear. But once he said it, it was sort of obvious.
Yeah, once he brought it to my attention, or he brought it to your attention, you brought it to mine. We have the same paddle, so we did a little testing between the two. It was obvious, clear as day. And then actually, John Q Pickleball, it's another YouTube channel. We were playing him, and he called me out on it, and he was really cool about it. He's like, dude, your paddle's screaming. There's something wrong with it. So I was hitting extra hard. My touch was off. So I'm a little, and the reason I'm bringing this up and kind of laboring on it is I felt really bad that I was using an illegal paddle for probably the second half of the day is when I found out, and I just didn't have any other choices. And I brought it up to everybody, and everybody was cool with it. But I just felt really bad that I was using
Ian,
this.
what does delaminated mean for those who?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah,
That's
tell me what that means.
So it is with these new generation second generation carbon fiber paddles, they have the edge foaming, right? It's been sealed in. So what happens in the delamination is when the surface, it's glued to the core, right? You got the layers, the outside layers and the inner core. They're glued on top of each other. When the adhesive anti-adheres, is that the word? When the glue comes off from the core, the surface doesn't, like if you had an old traditional paddle, the way you made them 2 or 3 years ago, it would be completely useless. The ball would hit it and would die because there's no tension. But because of the way they're making them with the edge foaming and tightening it all in with the heat seal, it's like a trampoline. So it comes off the core, but it stays tight. So then that ball hits and just ricochets off. Now it's really hard to have control, but you get way more power. It's up and it sounds funny. So I was hitting like a monster. My drops and dinks were affected. But when I'm playing next to Louie, who can force pop-ups, it was a nice advantage to have that paddle really be able to hit some screamers. But that's enough on the paddle delamination. But I thought it was really interesting. I'd never had it happen to me before. It's been spoken about in the pickleball community a lot. So that was my first experience with it. But we are going to move into now, what's your beef? We brought this section in last week. We absolutely loved it. So Tim, what's your beef, my man? What's your beef this week?
Okay, so we at the PickleBros have had a discussion that if we happen to say something that's one of our beefs and it might just apply to you, you get to assume that it's not you that we're talking about unless we name you by name, okay? So nobody be offended. If it happens to apply to you, it's just a coincidence. We're not.
Hold on.
Not
Anytime
trying
someone
to single anybody out.
Anytime someone says a sentence, but starts it by saying, "Hey, no offense," but then says the sentence and is super offensive, it's always about that person.
If the shoe fits.
Okay, yeah, right. No offense, but here comes something about you, right?
No. All right. So, okay. So you're playing with someone who is your beta. You are the alpha. You're the better player. DUPR backs you up on this. DUPR doesn't lie. And you're trying to strategize. You're trying to decide on a strategy to win this match. You, as the alpha, suggest that you do a certain thing. Mr. Beta then says, okay, yeah, sure, we can try that for one game, and then, we'll switch back if it's not working. No, we're going to try this for as long as I want. We're going to do it for as long. So as the alpha deserves a longer leash on their suggestions, because we're not saying that these two players aren't in the same, they're very close to being the same skill level, but one person is counted on for alpha duties.
Different responsibilities.
Yeah. We talked about that before. So I think that the alpha's opinion should hold a little bit more sway, and he should have a longer leash with his or her ideas. So my beef is, you can kind of apply this too to when your mixed doubles partner, for example, says, okay, you can poach, but only as long as it works. No, I'm going to keep poaching because I'm a strong player, and overall it's a good strategy. It's kind of along the same lines as that. So that is my beef. You're the alpha, you get a long leash. If you have ideas, you deserve to see those ideas through.
To be honest with you, I got nothing wrong with that beef. My beef this week is, and it's going to sound like I'm being hard on tournaments, but I've learned my lesson, and I'm not being critical of tournaments here. But when you don't get enough people in a certain bracket, the tournament directors have to shuffle things around. And what ends up happening is you have disparate player levels. You've got some guys who get shoved in with guys who they just shouldn't be playing with because they're way too good, or vice versa. They're playing guys that they get absolutely swamped. And at regionals, there were two groups. There's these two young teenagers who I've kind of been coaching, mentoring. They're new to the game, and they should have been in 3-0. And they ended up getting in the 3-5, 4-0 bracket. And they didn't win a game. I don't think they scored more than 6 points in their best game. And it wasn't really fair to them. It was their first tournament ever, by the way. And so it was unfortunate that their first experience was against teams that, there was nothing they could do about it, but they had no business being on the court yet. They just don't have the experience. And then counter, when I went out to Steamboat, I lost in the bracket round to the Baugh brothers, Lars and David, I believe. And solid players, like average to good 4-0s. And they ended up getting moved down into the 3-0, 3-5 arena, or at least playing some teams down there. And they were very frustrated by that. And I believe rightfully, they wanted to get bumped. They're like, if we're not going to play 4-0, can you at least send us up, not send us down? So I don't think the tournament directors are to blame here. The players aren't to blame. But my beef is when you end up seeing some matches that just shouldn't be existing. It's just unfortunate. Stolp, on to you, my man.
I'm digesting the beefs, and it's like, give the alphas a longer leash. Heck yeah, I'll put that on a t-shirt. I'm an alpha. Let's go. Give me that. Give me everything I can. I'll take everything you give me. So thank you, Tim. I like that one. Yeah, I got a beef. I got a real beef. I got a beef with people who do not say the score when it's their serve. Like, guess what? Read the pickleball rules. You have to say the score. And so when it's assumed, the hardest part about pickleball, I don't care. I'll fight somebody about this. Maybe not fight literally, but mentally and like with words, I'll fight with them about saying the dang score. It's the hardest part of the game in pickleball is the scoring. That's the hardest part that I'm willing to fight about, is scoring. Pickleball is so difficult. So say the damn score so I know what it is. And when it's assumed, I forget what the score is. I don't know what side I'm on. I'm stacking. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. We're playing with, high level. Say the score. Repeat. Say it loud enough for me to hear. Don't mumble. It's like, come on. I'm not into that. Tell me the score. I need to know it. That's my beef.
I love that. Jesse, what's your beef?
So my beef pertains to the DUPR League match that Tim and I played last week. We played two very strong players, and I think 4-9-ish. And we actually won the first game, 21-17. And then they kind of figured us out, and they adapted. and they started beating us in the second game. And Tim came to me and he said, I think this is when we switched sides, and he said, this isn't working. We need to try something new. And he had some suggestions. And I said, no, I don't think that will work. I'm going to figure this out. Well, my beef is with myself because I should have listened. I mean, I don't know if Tim's ideas would have worked. I don't know if we would have won, maybe not. And they ended up winning the last two games. I don't know if it would have worked, but I think I should have listened. I should have been a better partner. I should have listened, and we should have tried other things because it wasn't working. And I need to do better.
Wow.
Beefing on yourself. What it
Beefing
takes a
on
big
yourself.
person, the PickleBros. I like that.
I love that. Beefs on beefs. All right, guys.
That's good.
Beefs on beefs. We're going to move into today's discussion, and that's the origin stories. And I'm going to kick it off here. And I'm going to let you guys know that my background is in comment section. Guess real quick. All right, now we're going. Wrestling. I grew up as a wrestler. And not the fake WWE crap, like the real wrestling. The only thing, right? Oh yeah, I'm not poking the bear with Tim there. Wrestling, the only sport that God has participated in, that kind of wrestling. And the reason I bring it up is because wrestling has a significant effect on my pickleball game. One, I'm not a very good teammate. Wrestling is a solo endeavor. I love violent pickleball, and I'm very hard on referees. So I'm going to start with the referee portion of it. I reffed wrestling for 13 years. Came right out of high school. Didn't want to go wrestle in college. I had some offers, but I hated cutting weight, and I was just kind of mentally burned out from it. But I still loved the sport desperately. So got connected with some referees, and I started as a very rookie referee when I was 19 years old. And I actually retired this last year, just family obligations and pickleball wouldn't allow me to participate in all my hobbies. I had to give something up. But over the course of my career, I reached a very, very high level. And that's not to pat myself on the back, even though I am. I'm very proud of what I accomplished. But I was a professional referee. I reffed world champions, NCAA champions. I've had UFC champions and Bellator champions in my face as coaches yelling at me with spittle flying in my face because they were mad about a call I made. And just the highest level, the highest stress, and calls I made actually impacted the world and Olympic qualifiers, the tournaments. Guys, do they get to qualify? Do they get to go to the qualifier to qualify? Reffing at the US Open, getting on the main stage. So I've had a lot of amazing experiences. And I knew the sport inside and out. I had to know that rule book, or I would have been eviscerated by these guys who made it their life to know wrestling. And so I'm hard on referees in pickleball when most of them are volunteers. Most of them aren't pros. And I need to be so much more grateful to them for participating and helping us out. But when they're slow or they don't know the score, or, there's even a tournament at interaction at this last tournament at regionals. And I'm going to shout out Mary Jane. I love you, girl. You did such a good job. You were volunteering. You're just getting into reffing. And we were in the gold medal match, and I was frustrated with myself. And Mike McGregor hit a beautiful shot on me. Kind of made me look like a fool. But it got past me before I turned my head, and I had no idea. I wanted it to be out, but I thought it was in, and it was so good, I was not going to just errantly throw a call out. So I turned to MJ, and I said, what was it? And she was like, well, you have to make a call. I'm like, no. I'm asking you, what was the call? And we had this confusion. And we've talked about it later. She was confused, but I was kind of rude because I wanted that instant interaction and instantly to have her get it right. And I think that was too unfair a standard. So I'm very critical of referees. That's point number one. Then I love violent pickleball. I've had 3 surgeries and countless bloody noses and bruised face from wrestling. It's a violent sport. And I love body bags. I love hitting people. I love nasty Nelsons. There's a contingent of pickleball that's, in my opinion, soft, and I kind of abhor that. I look down upon it, and I like that. Like Stolp, you went for an ATP and you laid out and you threw yourself across the court, scraping your legs up. I'm like, oh, I love that. That's what I want to see. you know. So that the soft kind of classiness of pickleball doesn't always cater well to me. Um, and then finally, I'm not a great teammate. Wrestling is a solo endeavor. It's you out there battling by yourself. You have to rely on yourself, your own preparation, your own nutrition. Yeah, you've got a coach. Yeah, you've got teammates and parents, a support system. At the end of the day, once you shake hands, it's all on you. And I hate singles pickleball, partly because I'm not good at it and it hurts. But I like the mentality of singles. It's much easier for me than it is with doubles because I have a hard time with blaming my teammates for errors they make, being very critical of themselves, but even more so critical of myself. Because when I know I'm the weak guy and I'm the one who's making errors, I spiral quickly and I get in my own head because I'm like, well, crud, someone's relying on me. It's not just myself. So that's the trifecta there. Why don't you guys go ahead and respond to anything you thought was interesting? But I'm a wrestler who's now a full convert to pickleball.
So tell me, Ian, how did you get into pickleball, and how does that translate into? I mean, I heard your 3 points, but how'd you get into pickleball from wrestling, and tell us that origin.
Yeah, I was recovering from yet another surgery. I was working out at the gym, and I was still trying to I was trying to play indoor soccer, and there were just some other things. Pickup basketball I was dabbling with, just nothing really fit me. I was at the gym, and Jared, who has been mentioned many times, he and I were buddies in college. Well, I was a couple, like 2 or 3 years older. So once I graduated, we kind of lost touch. And I was at the gym, and he was playing pickleball on the gym courts, and I was like, "That's my buddy." So I went down there, said hi, teased him for, and I quote, "What are you doing playing this old man's game?" And he said to me, "Dude, I know what you're thinking. I thought it too, but trust me, you're going to love this. Just come on Thursday. I have an extra paddle for you. Just trust me." And I wanted to hang out with my buddy, and I was like, I can crush all these old people. I'm an athlete. And I fell in love so hard. From that day on, for that next year, I was playing probably 10 hours a week of pickleball. Dragged my wife into it, dragged my kids into it, dragged my family into it. It was a pure obsession. And I probably only got to a strong 3-5 level in that year, but that year of pickleball was the most fun I've ever had playing by far. Sometimes what we're doing here now with a podcast, 4 or 5 regionals, drilling, DUPR leagues, it can be stressful. It can feel like a job. Man, those were the good days when I didn't know what I was doing and I was learning the game. So hopefully that's a good answer to you there.
How long have you been playing then? What was this timeline?
Around 2.5 years now.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, Ian, let me just say, I share your frustrations with those officials. I remember watching a match between Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior, and that official completely screwed Macho Man out of the championship. Like I'm right there with you.
That's good.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Tim, why don't you go ahead now? We'll move away from wrestling, and why don't you let everyone know kind of your origin story?
Right. So it was just here last week that I was cursing the game of tennis, and I decided that this week would be more of a love letter to tennis, because it is where I got started. I was smitten when I first picked up a tennis racket. I truly was. And I've been playing tennis for over 35 years. And I would still be playing tennis. I could always hit. I loved hitting. I just loved hitting. I loved competing as an individual. I always played singles. I always knew that I would be able to get the next ball, so I didn't have to share with anybody. I was a great striker of the ball. I just really enjoyed that aspect of it so much. I played in so many tournaments, had so many great memories, racked up a bunch of trophies, had a really good juniors ranking in the Midwest. But then as I got older, it just kind of became something where, have racket, will travel sort of a thing. I wasn't really connected to any sort of tennis team. Didn't really feel like I had any connection to, a group of guys that would go out and play. I would just sort of call up certain people and just challenge them to matches. And that would have still continued. However, I moved to Georgia in around 2019. And the tennis scene in Georgia was tough. And it was simply because the guys that were at my level in Georgia only wanted to play on Friday nights. And sometimes it's that simple. It's like, well, I'm not playing on Friday nights because it's pizza movie night in my house. I'm not playing tennis. So I was still able to play some tennis, but COVID hit and tennis really got tough to play as far as USTA, which is the overarching system and the body that governs tennis. They kind of shut down all their league play and tournament play. And so I would occasionally just, I'd call up people and go play. But it was around this time that a guy from my church asked me to go try out some pickleball at a local club. It was one of these things where it was indoors. It was on a basketball court. So it was at, that sort of surface, the hardwood floor, shiny surface. So it's a little bit different from what the four of us play for sure. But I had heard about this game before, mostly in a mocking way from my tennis friends back in Maryland, who said all the same things that Ian said when he first was approached to go play, which is, this is an old man's game. It sucks. It's lame. It's easy. It's not for athletes, all that stuff. Those are sort of my impressions going into it, but the tennis just wasn't happening. So I was willing to give this a shot. And so it was a guy from my church, me, and I forget who else was there, actually. I think it was another guy from our church and then someone else. Oh, his son. And I couldn't believe I'd actually played a version of this in gym growing up. I forgot. And it was very popular with me and my friends. But I couldn't believe just how satisfying it was to hit that ball. I mean, it is the exact same stuff. I was killing everybody I was playing with, just playing like a tennis player, like no nuance to my game at all. I'm just hitting the ball as hard as I can. But it was so satisfying. It came so easy and a lot more easily than it came to my counterparts. So I had the impression that I could do this and be really good at it. But the outlet that I had to keep playing was over at a local club, and it's kind of ironic. You think of pickleball as being, it's so social, it's so welcoming, it's so friendly. That's not really what I found at this place. So I kind of stopped going, and for a while I wasn't really doing anything. I was running, if you can believe that, Jesse.
Running.
Yeah, just running. And so a period of time went by, and I did introduce the game too at one point to my tennis friends, and they all loved it too, and they were all very good at it too. But some time went by, I didn't play at all, and then word of mouth reached my ears that my tennis buddies had all gotten really good, and they were rising to the top of the Augusta scene in pickleball, and this sort of lit a fire under me, and so I got back involved, and I told the story about how it was a banger, and it took me playing the game of trash to really change my approach to the game and my style somewhat. I wrote an article for a blog about, hey, you should drop more. You shouldn't just, hit drives. Otherwise, you're not going to get the respect of the best players in your area. And I went from there. I started playing tournaments. I started playing in leagues, and it just carried on over into the springs here. And my game is still very much like a tennis player. I still love driving, as you guys know. I love speeding the ball up and let's go, let's get some action going. I love that aggressive mindset because that's exactly the kind of tennis player I was. I was very aggressive. I just hit forehands and backhands very aggressively from the baseline. That was my game. I did find that playing net in pickleball was a lot easier. My volley game in tennis was pretty non-existent. I just hung out at the baseline and just hit ground strokes all day long. I found that in pickleball, the volleys were so much easier. I had no reason to be afraid up there, and I really embraced the attacking style from the kitchen line. I just loved doing that. Loved hitting overheads. They were so much easier suddenly. But as you guys know, some other aspects from tennis have also translated over to my pickleball game, and mainly the attitude of, okay, let's have it quiet, stop all that chatter. put your Bluetooth speaker away. We don't need to hear that garbage. You can listen to that stuff on the way home.
All the terrible aspects of tennis that you brought to us.
Yes. And I'll admit, like, all those things I didn't think that I was into because, I mean, tennis is a lonely, lonely game. It really is. And you're just stuck in your own head when you're playing tennis. And that's exactly why I got away from tennis. And yet it's what I'm used to. Old habits are hard to break. And it's kind of how I am in pickleball. I mean, I like having a partner there. Like I said, in tennis, I never used to play doubles. I never liked doubles. I like being on court with a partner in pickleball. I'm not the most talkative guy still, but I do feel like, hey, I like being part of a team. Like, I really like this. I like the role that I play. I like the role that my partners play, how there's a separator there. There's a difference with what I do compared to what they do, what they're expected to do. I love the strategy. I love the short game, which is something I never embraced in tennis. So I just absolutely love pickleball, you guys. And I'm so happy to have it in my life.
Awesome.
All right. I have a question. Can you confirm or deny that the tennis community into pickleball is like the skiers versus snowboarders? Like, is there that sort of tension amongst tennis players to pickleball's the fastest growing sport and we hate these people because it's the cool thing to do now, and tennis is, the etiquette and politeness, kind of like the skiers were. These are my mountains. I do this pristine sport, and you're the young kids that ruin the mountain for everybody. Is that the tennis community versus pickleball, skiers versus snowboarders?
Well, I suspect that on the slopes, I'm more of a skier. With a tennis player's mentality, I'm the skier. And I literally am the skier because I don't know how to snowboard. And I also cannot speak to the rivalry between skiers and snowboarders. I have no clue what that's like. I suspect it's pretty similar to what we're experiencing in tennis and pickleball. But I can tell you for sure, though, my friends from tennis are quite antagonistic towards pickleball. They hate the noise. They hate the culture. They hate that their space is being infringed upon. And they're not even as friendly towards me anymore. Unless I'm in some fantasy football leagues with some of them. I mean, that's an exception right there. Yeah, we always got to try to bridge the gap with these guys. But awesome. But we're going in different directions, man. I'm part of the future. The tennis players are stagnating. And to be honest, not as happy as they could be.
Tim, there's an observation I made when we were talking about the drilling episode that I wish I'd have mentioned. I was like, kind of had the thought afterwards, and you were kind of dogging on drilling. It's your 30 years of tennis is why you don't feel like you need to drill. Your drops in the bucket. You've got so much racket experience. So I wanted to point out, it's not that you dislike drilling or don't think it's useful. It's you've already put in your time. Jesse, do you have any questions for Tim before we go on to hear your origin story?
Yeah, I was just curious, when you first stepped on a pickleball court, what would you say your rating was, and how long did it take you to get to, say, 4.0 or 4.5?
I think I've moved. My movement has been a lot slower and shorter on the DUPR scale than your guys's have. I think I started pretty high. I want to say I was probably like a 4.4.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It really does. A lot of the tools that are useful, you kind of already had, and it's not hard to learn the drop and the dink once you have that set up. Jesse, what is your pickleball origin story?
So my background is in distance running. I ran cross country and track in both high school and college and throughout most of my adult life. And as in pickleball, I was not very good when I first started. I remember I ran one cross-country race my freshman year of high school. There were 91 runners, and I placed 87th. So that was a pretty inauspicious start, but I became obsessed with it, and I ran a lot, and I trained hard. And just as in pickleball, hard work is rewarded in distance running, and you can get a lot better. And I trained harder than almost anyone I knew. I trained in the off season when most people were just resting. and they felt burned out or they were taking time off, I was out running, and I ran a lot of miles. And I had, moderate success in high school. I was one of the top runners in my school. I ran a 4:39 mile in high school.
That's gross.
I mean, thank you, but there's people running a lot faster, but it was okay. And then I went off to college, and I was most valuable runner on my cross country team my sophomore year and most improved. And I was co-captain of my cross country team my senior year. And again, I just attribute it to hard work. The other thing that was notable about the way I ran, particularly in cross country, is I ran a slow and steady pace. Like I was the tortoise and the hare. And a lot of these guys would run very fast for the first mile or so. I remember one race in college where there were 60 runners. I went out dead last, 60th place. And I stayed there for about a mile. It was a 5-mile race. And I just picked off people one at a time and ended up coming in third in that race. So I was a patient runner, and I like to think I'm a patient pickleball player as well. So I continued to run off and on as an adult. And I got really into it when I was in my late 30s, around 40 years old. And I remember I moved to Colorado Springs, and I remember running through Monument Valley Park, which is our beautiful park where we have 15 pickleball courts. And I remember seeing pickleball for the first time when I was a runner. And I think I even stopped for a second and looked at it. And I thought to myself, what is this? I knew it wasn't tennis, but I didn't know what it was. I just made a mental note. It looked like people were having fun. And then I went off and finished my run because that's what I was obsessed with. But unbeknownst to me, I had a problem with my hips where the head of the femur was rubbing against the hip labrum. And I got really into running. As I said, when I was about 40, I was running marathons. And I was running, one summer, I was running pretty consistently above 60 to 70 miles a week. And it was just rubbing that labrum, step after step after step, thousands of times every day. And one day I was in the gym doing some exercise there, and I felt a pop in my hip, and I had torn my hip labrum, and I had to get surgery. And I tried to get back into running after that. I even did the Pikes Peak ascent, but I was never the same again. I couldn't train like I had. And that was a central part of my identity. It was a central part of my social life. I had many friends in the Springs running community, and they all drifted away. And there was a hole in my life, and I gained 40 pounds and felt adrift. And then in around 2019, I decided to try to get into shape. I joined the gym. I was working out a lot, and that didn't really fill that hole for me. I didn't find it to be that satisfying. But I was at Lifetime Gym, and I heard that they were playing pickleball on the basketball courts 2 afternoons a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I went down there, and it was very kind of makeshift. There's like a million lines on those courts for basketball and other sports, volleyball, I think, and pickleball. And they would drag out these bags and put together the portable nets on the spot there, and we would play. And I learned the rules. And unlike Tim, I was not a 4-4 when I started. I had trouble getting my serve in. I had a lot of trouble getting my return in. I have limited background in racket sports. And I had spent 30 years running in a straight line forward. So lateral movement was difficult for me. But I fell in love with it and got obsessed with it. And then the gym shut down during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. And I thought, well, I assumed there are outdoor pickleball courts. So I went to one, not knowing if anybody would be there. And in fact, there were people there. And then I just totally fell in love with it and started playing every single day. And I remember that summer, I was probably about a 3-0, maybe a strong 3-0. I went back to Monument Valley Park to those 15 courts. And it's a beautiful park. There's trees and there's grass. And I played one day, and I just sat there under a tree and watched, because I liked watching the better players, try to learn from them. And there was one court where the players were obviously the best out of everyone. It was a man and a woman playing against a man and a woman. And the two men got into a gunfight, where it goes bam, 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 bam. And I was just like, oh, my mouth was hanging open. I was so impressed. Well, a couple months later, I was playing at another court, Banning Lewis, in Colorado Springs, and I saw one of the couples. And I didn't really understand the whole social hierarchy of pickleball. I didn't know any better. So I went up to them and I said, can me and my wife play with you? Not knowing that these 4-5s probably would not really enjoy playing some 3-0s like us. And they said, we're drilling right now, maybe later. And I thought, oh, they're just turning me down. That's a nice way of saying no. But about half an hour later, they called us over and said they would play with us. And they did. And they were so nice and joyful in their playing. And then they taught us how to drill. And I started drilling. And I bought a pickleball machine. And I drilled thousands of shots. And I got better. Slowly but surely. So, here I am now, a 4-5.
The sensei.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I deserve that name anymore after the way I played last week. But in any case, the male in that couple, his name is Mike Lee, and he's not the only person who served as a Sherpa to me. There have been several others, but tomorrow I'm playing with Mike Lee at PPA Denver. We're playing in a combined 4-5, 5-0 bracket. So I really feel like I've kind of come full circle to be able to play with him as my partner. And as for Lifetime, those basketball courts are now used mainly for basketball, not pickleball. But we have 4 dedicated pickleball courts, which they built on top of tennis court. And that's where I met you, Stolp, and that's where I met you, Tim, and that's where the PickleBros really came together. So that's been a nice journey. And I just want to also say that hole that I felt after I lost running, I feel like, it wasn't just the running, it wasn't the medals and the races, it was the friends that I had made. And I do feel like that hole has been filled now.
You've got some bros now. That's lovely. I knew some of that story, but I actually, believe it or not, there was a lot of new information there for me. But that slow and steady, I feel like that's how you play pickleball. So methodical, determined, that endurance, like just go the distance. That's totally you, man.
Yeah, I think you're such a great storyteller. I'm so just captivated when you start telling this timeline. And I think how you ended it there is such an important point for people to hear in this podcast. I know we reach a small community, but it's vast. It's across the country. I know. I see the emails. I hear the comments, and we have those conversations. The void that is filled from what you were missing in your past has been filled through the relationships that you have cultivated through pickleball. That is such a huge takeaway for me, and I wholeheartedly agree. But I love how you were able to find that and then and be happier because of it. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, it has been. It's been a great thing for me, a great part of my life.
Yeah, the friends and family from pickleball. I mean, that's what Tim was kind of saying. Like, even though he still carries some of those loner tennis attributes as a player, that's why you keep coming back, for your friends and the family you've made and that experience. Stolp, conclude our origin stories, and then you also have an announcement to make for our outro. So I'm going to pass it on over to you, my man.
Awesome.
Yep.
First of all, isn't it so cool just to hear the stories in this small setting of the 4 of us? Each one of us has a different origin story. We have tennis, we have wrestling, high level refereeing in wrestling, and then distance running, all competitors in different ways. My competitive side came from baseball. I have a 25 plus year baseball career that spans from little league to high school to summer balls, fall balls, winter balls in high school, to being recruited as a D1 college athlete, to then actually getting drafted and playing professionally for a handful of years in the San Francisco Giants organization. And so my background is athletically and competitively in baseball, and there's some things that definitely translate not only into pickleball but into life that I just walk around, that's in my DNA because of baseball. Just to give a perspective to everybody who may not know, baseball is 162 game season. So so put that in your head for a second. You're playing for half the year, and you're showing up every day, and so here's what a day looked like. Here's what a day looked like as a minor league baseball player. We would show up at 11 a.m. I was a pitcher. We'd show up and we'd do early work at 11 a.m. We would do some batting practice. We would do some pitcher infield drills. Pitchers would work out. We would run. We would then go back and we would let the other team do that. And then we would have to wait in the clubhouse for the game. And then the game would happen. And then pitchers who pitched that day would play. And then bullpen guys like myself would be called upon at any part of the day. So you have to be ready, all of which would end at about 11 p.m. that night. So we're showing up 162 games out of the year from, this crazy schedule. And we'd be on the road. We would be going from bus trips that were, I'm not joking, upwards of 30 hours at sometimes. I'll never forget Miss Vicky and Miss Vicky in the Appalachian Mountains. We had these sleeper buses that had 3 levels. So the guys who would start, like the starters would have the middle level with like the air condition. The guys who were probably not bench players get the bottom level that were just where all the garbage and the beer cans were rolling around. And then up top was like the relief pitchers and the pitching staff that were just like sweat boxes. I swear we lost 15 pounds right up there. And Miss Vicky would just be tearing through the Appalachian Mountains while dudes were just flying over on these sleeper buses. Seriously, 30 hours. It's crazy. I tell this story just to put a level of craziness of my mentality. My mentality from baseball translates into pickleball real well. So when I got bit by the pickleball bug, like we all did, I've have the shortest tenure career-wise in pickleball right now from all of us. I'm a year and a half deep, about, give or take a few months. I've probably played rec and competitive and league and this and that over 600 times in that time frame. In fact, I track it on my watch, and it shows you how many times you played. I counted like within the first year, it was well over 300. So that's because I want to show up, I want to put in the work, and I'm ready to take on whoever's better than me. My competitiveness inside of me. So you talked about a void, Jesse. When baseball ended, I had a competitive void in my life. I was not forced, but paid to work out and do these things that the Giants organization paid me to do. When that shut off, that shut off for me too. And so I didn't do it. And then, I had this void of not working out, not finding any competitiveness, not finding a community. I got really into CrossFit, where I found a great community, but I wasn't great at working out, and I didn't want to be great at working out. I picked up a pickleball paddle. A lot of the hand-eye coordination translated. It's very social, like a clubhouse in baseball. So I got to hang out with people that I like, and it's a sport that's really, really easy to learn but tough to master. So you put those 3 things together, and you couple on top of that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be great. That's what has kind of accelerated my pickleball career. So I've entered at a 3-0 level tournament and absolutely crushed with my first tournament. I shouldn't have been in 3-0, but it's like, what do you do? How do you, what do you,
I remember that.
Yeah,
we're like, that's probably not a good idea. You're like, it's my first one.
It's my first one. So I medaled out into, for every tournament I entered into until it started getting 4-0. And then I've medaled a couple times now at 4-5. And so this progressive, like, push yourself past what you think you can do, surround yourself around the right people, and show the community around you in pickleball that you're here to learn, you're coachable, and you're a good partner, and people will want to play with you. And it also helps to have some athletic ability. So I got picked up by one of a local guy out here, Ben, who said, man, all right, you need to come to this 5 a.m. group that was outdoors. And just because he saw all the things I just mentioned, and he's like, come out at 5 a.m. So I started doing that, and I haven't stopped actually doing that.
Ben found me too. Yep.
So there's these people, these figures in our pickleball life that really shepherd us to be the players we are today and where we're going to go. And so Ben was that for me. And then they actually were the ones, I was close with all these guys. I still am. They're a great group of guys, but they came to me and said, hey man, we're not doing you any favors. We need you to go move up the ladder. And so they kind of pushed me out of that group, and where I found the Pickle Bros and some of our other early morning guys. So anyhow, my story and origin story comes from competitive professional baseball, collegiate D1 baseball, and just this mental grind of what 162 games and the mentality of that translates into pickleball very well. And one thing I'll say, just about my game, I thrive. I'd like to think I thrive when some of the pressure gets on. I remember a tournament at Lifetime when there was the next group was coming on, and we were in our gold or medal match to get to the medal match, and there was a group of, like, let's call it 50 to 60 people around court 1 at that time, and I could sense the opponents getting nervous. And for whatever reason, just maybe my baseball background, my blood pressure dropped, my heart rate dropped, and things started to become clear. Because I've been in baseball stadiums with tens of thousands of eyes on me, and where I've had to perform and execute pitches. So it's the same thing I take into pickleball. It's like, hey, one shot at a time. As cliche as it sounds, you're one shot away from a winner. And so, like, I kind of take that mentality and translate that well from baseball into pickleball. And the other is how to make adjustments. If things are not working, to dissect that, analyze, and say, why is it not working? What can I do to fix that problem? Or have that partner. So my partner I view as, like, I was a pitcher. My partner's my catcher. So how do we have that arsenal, that battery together to face our opponents? And we game plan. So Jesse and I were in a tournament. We game plan against our opponents. We said how we're going to stack. We talked about these different who to target type conversations. It's the same type of thing with baseball, pitcher and catcher. Who's the batter coming up? What are his tendencies? What does he like to see? How does he handle an off-speed pitch? What does he do when he gets ahead in the count? What stuff like that. So all of it, to me, everything in my DNA translates to baseball. And baseball is a game that is built around failure. If you fail 7 out of 10 times as a hitter, you're in the Hall of Fame. So it's like people ride these emotional roller coasters in pickleball, like, oh, I had such a crappy day. I'm a 4-0 now, or I had such a great day, I'm a 5-0 now. I like to ride this even-keeled mentality to try and get better one shot at a time, one day at a time, one game at a time. It's super cliche to say, but and you guys have played these amounts of games as well in your career, but until you play 162 games of baseball, do you realize, like, consistency equals over the course of a season. So what is your season? What is your pickleball season? And how are you translating that to look at the long-term goal, and how do you get there? And for me, it's showing up with the right attitude. It's being a good partner. It's having fun. It's learning, and then it's adjusting. And then you repeat those cycles, and then hopefully you get better over time. So that's my origin story. And I'm so grateful to meet you all through that.
Wow. That was, man, I fear even to make comments after that. Jesse, Tim, do you have anything? I got one comment to say, is that volume of work you did, that season of the length of games, long season, the traveling, you play basically every day at 5 a.m. And now it makes perfect sense to me why you can handle such a workload. Like, you're an animal, bro. So Jesse, Tim, any comments or thoughts on that wonderful elaboration?
Yeah, just that we're so blessed to have Stolp at 5 a.m. every single morning. It's just, it's so awesome because his enthusiasm is so present every single day he's on the court, and he's such a great teammate. He's so great to compete against and with. It's just, yeah, that story is just so Stolp. That passion just came through.
Yep.
So transparently, and it just makes, we all know this about Stolp. We all know what a great attitude he has, how competitive he is. But to hear that background just drives it home. It fills in any gaps that there may have been. It's just it's such a great story, Stolp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whenever we set up a game, like I'll say, I only play a couple times a week because I can't really tolerate more than that. But I'll be like, oh, Monday, who wants to play? And like 9 times out of 10, the first person to be, yep, I'll play. It's Stolp.
Yep. We have something special going here at the Pickle Bros, and everybody watching, we feel the same way about you guys. But I am going to hand it off to Stolp one last time.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So when in the coming weeks, if you don't see my little box in the corner, reference minute 55 from episode 8, and this will help gain some perspective to that. So I'm going to be taking a 4 to 5 week break from the podcast, and here's why. Quick story. My brother suffers from a very rare liver disease. It's called alpha-1 antitrypsin. He's been diagnosed since he was in middle school or even a little bit before. He's now 33. So we've known about this for 20 plus years. And in that diagnosis at that time, no matter what he did, healthy living, no drinking, which he did his entire life, no drinking, healthy living, he was going to have cirrhosis of the liver. He was going to need a new liver. Well, his health has severely declined over the past months, and he's been on an organ transplant list, and his scores have been getting worse and needing a transplant. Now, these lists, that's a whole different conversation. It's really, really difficult to get a deceased donor liver. So in that process, I said, hey, man, take my liver. You can have mine. And he said, that's too big of an ask. And I said, no, I'm not asking. I'm insisting you take my liver. Because believe it or not, medical technology out there, they can take a piece of a healthy liver, get rid of the bad liver, and in this case, my brother, put that piece into my brother, and within 8 to 10 weeks, it regrows to full strength and also regrows to full strength back in me. So it's been a wild process to do this. So I have been going through extensive testing to see how compatible we are, because they're really, really cautious about the size, the blood matching, because they're worried about clotting and all these things, and the compatibility, because they want to make sure we don't create 2 liver cases. Anyways, we got green lit and said, hey, you're a compatible match, or you're a compatible match. And long story, I guess, made longer. We have surgery scheduled for tomorrow. So this is actually a day to celebrate, because you can hear this is decades in the making, and now we have a light at the end of the tunnel, and this will help my brother live a long, healthy life. So in that, I will not be on the podcast, as I will be in recovery mode, and it's pretty intense. I will be taking a 3-month minimum break from pickleball, because they don't want anything happening with the abdomen wall that they're going to be cutting through and removing and doing all the work with. And there could be complications if you start doing things too early. So I will be in recovery mode for the next 8 to 10 weeks with no pickleball for the next 3 months. But as you can hear in my voice, hopefully see in my eyes, this is a celebratory moment. This is exciting. And I'm just so thankful for you all on this screen to give me the grace and flexibility to step away. I know you're going to run a great show. You always do. And I'll be giving updates to the crew, and I'm sure they'll transmit those over the airwaves here to let everybody know. But I am going to be going into surgery and actively recovering over the coming months. So that's the news. I'm not going anywhere, though. You're not gonna be able to get rid of me.
Can't get rid of you yet.
Can't get rid of me yet. So I'm excited to be able to do this, but I will be coming back. But if people are wondering where's that guy Stolp, you can just reference back to the last few minutes. So thanks, fellas.
Yeah, if it wasn't obvious, well, I know it is obvious how special you are. Jesse and I are just trying to keep it together. We're the beta players and the emotional ones in the group. You're a special dude. We love you, man. So proud of what you're doing, and we admire you. Best wishes to you and your brother in recovery. Long life of health to him. So we love you. Be good. Stay out of the kitchen. and we'll see you, Stolp, on the court soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.